She had only 2 days left to live, and all she wanted was dinner, not for herself, but for her children. 3 children, scattered across different homes, living with families who no longer spoke her name. But tonight, she cooked for them anyway. She waited, smiled, and whispered a prayer into the silence. Lord, just let me see them once. What happened over the next 24 hours would move an entire town to tears. Interior Smoot Dan, watched there in the most biddy of doctor, with living with one ways. Interior, small wooden house, evening rain. The clock ticked louder than her heartbeat. Mary sat by the window, wrapped in a faded shawl. A thin stream of light fell across her face, revealing the quiet fight behind her tired eyes. She was 35, too young to die, yet old in pain and sacrifice. Her skin was pale, her hands were thin, veined with time. Each breath she took sounded like a whisper from another world. Table with 3 framed photos. On the wooden table beside her bed sat 3 small frames. 2 boys and 1 girl. Thomas, the eldest, had a smile as bright as sunlight. Daniel, the second, always looked as if he was hiding a secret dream. And Emily, the youngest, her laugh still echoed in Mary's ears like music. 3 souls, 3 homes, 3 families, and 1 mother who loved them all from afar. Mary touches the photos. Her fingers traced the glass as if she could feel their faces. She remembered the day she let them go, the rain falling just like today, her heart breaking with every step away from her door. When poverty came and sickness followed, Mary did what she thought was love. She gave them to people who could keep them alive. But no one told her that life without them would feel worse than death itself. Candle flame flickers. The doctors had said 2 days. 2 days to breathe. 2 days to hope. 2 days to say goodbye. Mary looked at the clock. Each tick felt like a heartbeat fading away. She folded her hands together, closed her eyes. God, I don't ask for a miracle. Just let me see my children once more. That's all. Scene. She stands slowly, walks to the old telephone. Her fingers shake as she lifts the receiver. Dust clings to the cord. She dials the first number, Thomas's adoptive home. The ring echoes like a distant bell. A woman answers, polite but cold. Mary forces a smile even though no one can see it. Her voice is gentle, carefully measured, like someone afraid of breaking. Mary. Hello. This is Mary. You may not remember me, but I'm Thomas's birth mother. I just wanted to see him once. Only once. Mary. That isn't appropriate. Once you give a child for adoption, you should move on. It's healthier for everyone. Please don't call again. Her words cut through Mary like a blade of ice. But Mary doesn't argue. She simply whispers, I understand, but please listen. I have only 2 days left to live. I don't want to take him away. I just want to see his face before I go. On the other end, silence. Then the woman breathes deeply. Adoptive mother. We'll come tomorrow, Mary. A promise. Small and fragile, but enough to make her smile. Scene. Night. Mary lights the stove. She moves slowly through the kitchen, her bare feet touching the cold floor. She pulls out an old pan, adds a little oil, some spices. The smell fills the air, warm, familiar. Every stir of the spoon brings back a memory. Thomas's laughter, Daniel's tiny hands, Emily's voice singing by the window. She places 3 plates on the table, wipes them carefully with a cloth, as if polishing jewels. She knows they may never come. But hope is a strange thing. It doesn't need proof to survive. Tonight, she will believe. Late night, moonlight through window. Mary sits again by the window. Her shawl slips off her shoulders. She pulls it back without noticing. Outside, the streetlight flickers. A dog barks somewhere far away. The world feels quiet, as if it's waiting with her. She closes her eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of her heart in her hands. Each beat tells her, tomorrow is all that matters. Tomorrow, her children are coming home. The night after Mary's first call passed quietly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The air inside her small wooden home felt colder now, each shadow longer, each second heavier than the last. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The doctor's words still echoed faintly. 2 days at most. Yet she clung to that tiny spark inside her, hope. Hope that tomorrow, one door would open. She sat near the window again, watching droplets trace paths down the glass. A candle burned beside her, its flame soft and unsteady. Outside, the rain whispered like a lullaby only the dying could hear. By morning, the storm had settled into mist. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in thin, golden lines. Mary's breathing was shallow, but her eyes still searched the road. Every sound made her turn slightly, a bicycle bell, a passing truck, a barking dog. But the road stayed empty. She smiled weakly and told herself that waiting was also a kind of love. Then she reached for the phone again. Miles away, in a crowded airport terminal, Daniel's adoptive father stood at gate 17. A business suitcase sat at his feet, and his wife held Daniel's small hand as they waited to board a flight for a family trip mixed with work. The loudspeaker announced, "Final boarding for flight 602. Just then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, an unfamiliar number. But something made him answer. On the other end, a weak, trembling voice whispered, "Sir, I am Mary, Daniel's birth mother. I have only 2 days left. If possible, I just want to see him once." Daniel's adoptive father froze. His heart dropped. The noise of the airport faded until all he could hear was her fragile breathing. His wife watched his face change. She sensed everything. He turned slowly toward the boarding gate, then toward the exit. There was no hesitation. He canceled their flight, canceled the meetings, canceled the trip. Daniel looked up at him with wide, confused eyes. "Dad, what happened?" He knelt, touched Daniel's cheek gently. "Someone very important is waiting for us." And they ran, through the terminal, through the parking lot, toward a decision. Back in her small home, Mary placed the phone down and rested her head against the wall. The sunlight reached her face, painting her skin in gold. She didn't know who would come. She didn't know when. But she felt peace, a rare peace that lives only inside faith. Slowly, she rose from her chair, walked into the kitchen, and began to cook again. Each movement was slower now, deliberate, graceful. She poured water into a pot, stirred with trembling hands, and watched the steam rise like morning prayer. The smell of spices filled the house again, mingling with memory and longing. As she worked, she remembered Daniel as a boy, how he used to run barefoot through the backyard, his laughter echoing through the open windows. She remembered how he had once asked her if love could be packed inside a lunchbox. And now, years later, she was still packing that same love into every meal. Her eyes filled, but not with tears of sorrow. These were tears of gratitude, because even if her body was failing, her heart still knew how to give. Outside, the wind carried the smell of food into the street. A few neighbors paused, noticing the little house at the corner, where the window was half open and soft music played from an old radio. They didn't know her story, but they could feel the silence around that house, a silence too heavy to belong to just one person. Inside, Mary set 3 plates again. One for Thomas, one for Daniel, one for Emily. The same 3 plates she had polished the night before. Each plate was a prayer, a memory, a promise. At the airport, the man and his wife walked back toward the parking lot. The announcement for their canceled flight echoed behind them. He didn't regret it. He felt strangely free, as if he had escaped a trap built by his own priorities. The wife held his hand tighter than usual. Neither of them spoke. There was no need to. They both knew where they were going. As their car rolled onto the highway, the sky began to clear. The morning clouds lifted, revealing soft beams of light cutting through the air. It looked like the heavens themselves had opened a path. In a small house miles away, a woman who had lost almost everything stood beside a table full of hope. She looked out the window, her eyes fixed on the road. She didn't know that somewhere far away, a car had just begun its journey toward her. Mary sat back down, exhausted. The smell of food filled the room. The candle flickered beside her. She placed her palms together and closed her eyes once more. The house was quiet, except for the gentle tick of the clock. Sometimes, faith begins where logic ends, and that morning, in a little house wrapped in silence, Faith was already walking home. The afternoon sun touched the little house with a gentle warmth. Dust floated in the air, turning golden as it passed through the light. The world outside moved as usual. Children played, cars hummed past, but inside Mary's home, time seemed to have stopped. She had been awake since dawn. Her body was weak, her legs trembled when she stood, yet her eyes held a quiet glow. There was something sacred about this day. Perhaps it was hope, perhaps it was the nearness of goodbye. On the wooden table lay 3 plates, the same ones she had cleaned, polished, and set aside the night before. They waited like silent witnesses to her longing. In the kitchen, a pot simmered softly. The smell of spices filled the air, a mixture of rosemary, garlic, and memory. Every sound, the soft bubbling, the hiss of steam, felt like a conversation between her and the past. She moved slowly from one corner to another, folding napkins, stirring the pot, checking the bread in the oven. Every motion was measured, as if she feared each movement might be her last. Her breathing grew heavier, but she refused to sit down. Cooking had become her prayer. Narrator. For hours she worked, though her strength faded with every passing minute. At times, she would lean against the counter, closing her eyes to steady her heartbeat. But when she opened them again, she smiled, because the food was almost ready. The walls of her home were lined with memories, photos that time had begun to fade. Little shoes, a broken toy, a ribbon once tied in Emily's hair. Every object seemed alive, watching her, listening. She looked at the clock, 3 in the afternoon. Still no sound of footsteps, no knock at the door. Her lips trembled slightly, but her eyes, still hopeful, turned again to the road outside. Miles away, 2 cars moved across the countryside. In one of them sat a man and a woman, the couple from the airport. The husband's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Beside him, his wife sat silently, her face calm but her eyes glistening. They passed through towns, through gas stations, and endless stretches of green. At times, the wife looked at her phone, reading the old text message again. "I just want to see them once." It felt like those words were following them like a faint voice in the wind. 2 cars rolled into the muddy driveway. The white car stopped first. From it stepped Thomas's adoptive parents, a white couple with gentle faces, followed by Thomas, who ran eagerly toward the porch. Moments later, the black SUV pulled up. Daniel stepped out quickly, backpack still on his shoulders. His adoptive father, a tall black man, closed the car door. His adoptive mother, a white woman, held Emily's small gift bag in her hand. All 3 families came together at the small wooden house, united by a woman who loved 3 children enough to let them go. Inside, Mary felt her heart flutter as she heard the steps approaching. The door opened slowly. A soft breeze entered, carrying the smell of rain and travel. Mary leaned forward in her chair, her breath thin and shaking. 2 small silhouettes stood in the doorway, not grown men, but 2 young boys, her boys. Thomas, 13, stepped in first. His curly hair brushed the edge of his forehead and his jacket hung loosely on his thin shoulders. Behind him stood Daniel, 10, holding the hand of his adoptive father, a tall, gentle African-American man, and his adoptive mother, a soft-spoken white woman standing beside him. The boys' eyes, happy, sparkled with emotion. For a moment, none of them moved. Only the clock ticked in the quiet room. Mary's smile trembled as she lifted her weak hands toward them. Thomas rushed forward, unable to hold back. Daniel followed, eyes filling with tears, his small hands shaking as he released his adoptive father's hand. Both boys knelt in front of her, two tiny hearts she had carried within her own. Thomas whispered, "Mom, we're here." Daniel pressed his cheek against her hand, voice breaking. "We came, Mommy." Their adoptive parents stood by the doorway, quiet, respectful, deeply moved. The little house, once silent, now breathed with life. Through the parking lot, toward a decision made out of pure compassion. Hours had passed since Thomas and Daniel arrived. Mary sat quietly with her boys beside her, but her eyes kept drifting to the door, to the window, to the road outside. One child was still missing, her youngest, her little Emily. Mary's breath grew unsteady. Her fingers pressed slowly against her chest, a silent pain blooming inside her, not from illness, but from the fear that she might leave this world before seeing her baby's face again. The room fell quiet. Even the ticking clock seemed to wait. Scene: Emily's family on the road. Miles away, a small black car sped down an old country road. Inside it sat Emily, a tiny girl with soft curls, a pink dress, and a small stuffed rabbit hugged tightly to her chest. Her adoptive father, a calm white man in his late 30s, kept his eyes fixed on the road. Her adoptive mother sat beside him, hands clasped, heart pounding. They were late. They had left early, but halfway through the drive, their car broke down. The engine had coughed, sputtered, and died in a cloud of white smoke. The father tried everything, opened the hood, checked the wires, called for help, but the nearest mechanic was miles away. Time was slipping through their fingers. Every minute felt heavier. Every mile unexplored filled them with guilt. Scene: a desperate call. While the mechanic worked on the engine, Emily's adoptive mother made a call to Thomas's adoptive family, who were already at Mary's house. Her voice shook. "Please, tell Mary we are coming. We had car trouble, but we're trying our best. Please, tell her to hold on." On the other side, Thomas's adoptive mother whispered back, "Hurry. She's getting weaker." The words broke the couple's hearts. Emily listened quietly from the back seat, her little lips trembling. She didn't understand everything, but she understood one thing. Mommy is waiting. Scene: the ride they didn't expect. The car engine wasn't ready in time. The mechanic needed more minutes, minutes they did not have. Then suddenly, a school bus appeared down the road. Bright yellow, filled with children, heading toward a museum trip. Emily's father waved both hands. The bus slowed. The driver, a kind woman with silver hair, rolled down the window and listened to their story. A dying mother, a final meeting, a child who needed to reach her. The bus driver nodded once, no hesitation. Then, something unexpected happened. Every child on the bus shouted, "Let her in! We'll help! We want to come too!" The back door opened. Emily was lifted inside. Children made room for her, holding her backpack, her stuffed rabbit, touching her shoulder gently. The bus took off, faster than any car could have. Scene: the arrival. The yellow bus turned onto Mary's dusty road. Its horn echoed across the quiet fields. Inside the house, Mary's eyes opened slowly, as if waking from a dream. Her breath paused. Thomas looked toward the window. Daniel stood up, heart racing. Outside, the school bus stopped. Children stepped down, and among them, a tiny girl in a pink dress ran forward. Emily. The moment Mary saw her, something inside her lit up, like a candle given a final breath of air. Emily ran into the house, her small feet slapping against the wooden floor. She stopped right in front of Mary. Her eyes were wide, shining. Her tiny voice broke the silence. "Mommy." Mary's trembling hands lifted. Emily climbed into her lap, resting her head on her chest, exactly the way she used to. Tears rolled down Mary's face, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of completion. Around them, the adoptive parents stood in awe. Children from the bus gathered at the door, silent, moved, watching love do the impossible. Mary whispered, "Thank you for giving me all three." For the first time in years, her family was complete. Emily's tiny arms wrapped around Mary's waist, her little head resting on her mother's trembling chest. For a moment it felt as if the world stopped moving, as if time itself had paused to make room for this final miracle. Mary closed her eyes. A soft breath escaped her lips. Her fingers brushed through Emily's curls, then moved shakily toward Thomas and Daniel. All three children were finally with her. Sometimes, a heart holds on longer than a body can. A shadow crossed her expression. Her shoulders sagged. Her grip loosened. Her breathing grew thin, like a candle flame trembling at the edge of wind. Thomas looked up first. "Mom," he whispered. Daniel gently shook her arm. "Mommy, are you okay?" Emily's small fingers clutched her dress tighter, her eyes wide and frightened. Mary tried to smile. She tried to speak, but her voice broke into silence. Her head fell back slightly, the exhaustion finally catching her. Her body leaned to the side. Thomas caught her shoulder. Daniel held her hand. Emily pressed her cheek against her, refusing to let go. The room filled with panic, but no one screamed. The kind of fear that comes when you realize someone you love is slipping away in front of you. Thomas's adoptive father stepped forward first, his hands steady but trembling inside. Daniel's adoptive mother knelt beside Mary, checking her pulse with shaking fingers. "Her breathing is slowing. She's too weak," she whispered. Daniel's adoptive father placed a gentle hand on the boys' shoulders, trying to comfort them, even as his own eyes filled with tears. Emily's adoptive mother wrapped her arms around the little girl, holding her close, but Emily refused to leave her birth mother's side. Mary's eyelids fluttered, her lips parted slightly, as if gathering the last strength she had left. Her voice was no more than a breath. "Don't cry." Thomas leaned in, tears flowing. Daniel pressed their mother's hand to his cheek. Emily whispered, "Mommy." Mary was a poor widow. Life had crushed her, and she had given her three children up for adoption. But she carried one last wish in her heart, to see them once, before she died. And that day finally came. 2 cars arrived, and then a yellow school bus stopped in front of her small house. First came her eldest son, then her younger boy, and last, little Emily, running with all her heart. The 3 children gathered around her bed, and soon the entire village stood outside her home. Even school children filled the doorway, silent and watching. In that moment, Mary was not alone. She was not abandoned. Everyone she loved was right there beside her. With a soft smile, Mary took her final breath. Her last wish fulfilled. Her 3 children and a whole village came for her. The world did not change that day. The rain still came. People still hurried to work. Life went on as it always does. But in one small corner of the earth, a circle had closed. A promise had been kept. Love had done what even time could not. Days later, the house stood quiet again. Not lonely, just still. The air carried the faint scent of bread and candles. Neighbors passed by and often stopped at the gate just to breathe for a moment, to remember the woman whose kindness had touched them. Children from the school bus still visited sometimes. They would sit on the steps, draw pictures, and leave them under the flower pot. No one told them to do it. They just did. Emily's adoptive parents came back once more, helped the brothers pack a few belongings. They sat together in the living room sharing quiet stories about Mary. There was no tension, no guilt, only gratitude that they had known her, even briefly. When they left, they promised to keep the house as it was, a place where anyone could come, sit for a while, and feel peace. Narrator. And so it was. The years passed. Grass grew tall around the fence, but the path to the door never disappeared. People began to call it the mother's house. Travelers stopped there to rest. Sometimes they found bread left on the table, a candle burning though no one had lit it. They said they could feel her presence, not haunting, but watching, like the warmth of a prayer that never ends. The town kept her memory alive. Every year on the day of her passing, children gathered again. They cooked together, told her story, and left a plate empty in her honor. The empty plate became a symbol. For every mother who waits, for every child who returns, for every act of love that outlives its moment. Some stories don't end when life does. They simply change form, from breath to wind, from voice to echo, from heart to light. And somewhere beyond the clouds, Mary watched over them all, smiling that same quiet smile she wore the night she waited by the window. Her prayer had traveled far, through rain, through time, through hearts willing to listen. Because love, when it is true, never needs to be seen. It only needs to be remembered.